September 8, 2015, Tianjin. Colorful flags, a red carpet, deafening gongs and drums, and a grand symphony. An extravagant ceremony was unfolding at the foot of a skyscraper. On this day, the Golden Finance 117 Tower celebrated its structural topping-out ceremony. As hundreds of guests looked on, the final steel beam was slowly hoisted to a height of nearly 600 meters, symbolizing another triumph of human engineering. However, this was not a coronation, but an elaborately staged funeral. It was the most expensive, high-profile, and bizarre public farewell in the history of human architecture. The champagne bubbles from the ceremony had not yet dissipated when the financial chain behind the scenes had already snapped. A few months later, thousands of construction workers departed like a receding tide, leaving behind tens of thousands of tons of steel and concrete to fall silent in the winds of the Bohai Bay. The 81-ton, diamond-shaped observation deck that was meant to crown the tower became an unfulfillable fantasy on a blueprint. One of the world's fastest elevators, just shy of its final installation, was henceforth stalled at the entrance to hell. This colossal tower, which cost around $10 billion and carried all the ambitions of a business empire, was declared brain-dead, just one step away from completion. In the decade that followed, the abandoned 117 Tower, forsaken in the physical world, achieved a godlike status in cyberspace and among a subculture. It became the ultimate holy grail for the global urban explorer urbex community, a modern vertical ruin of a Tower of Babel. They don't call it a ruin, but an unfinished miracle. Infiltrating this legally off-limits zone and climbing the city's tallest scar became a rite of passage for extreme sports enthusiasts. The images they left behind unveiled the surreal scenes inside this behemoth to the world. Where a Michelin 3-star revolving restaurant was supposed to be, only flocks of pigeons were nesting. On floors meant for the offices of Fortune 500 CEOs, only the wind whistling through 1,000 empty window frames could be heard, like the deep breaths of a sleeping giant. In a way its builders would have least wanted, the 117 Tower became Tianjin's most famous, internet-famous, landmark. Fast forward to the summer of 2025. After several failed auctions and countless rumors of restructuring, a new construction permit, like a faint EKG reading, announced that this behemoth, dormant for a decade, seemed to be showing signs of life. A decade means over 3,650 days and nights of exposure to wind, sun, rain, and acid rain. Its core tube, the reinforced concrete spine supporting a total weight of 1.2 million tons, has its concrete strength degraded due to carbonation. Have tens of thousands of tons of structural steel developed potentially fatal metal fatigue in welds invisible to the naked eye? To answer these questions, engineers must use ultrasonic flaw detectors, metal hardness testers, and even drill core samples from the structure for laboratory analysis. They need to use centimeter-level satellite positioning and 3D laser scanning technology to resurvey the entire building to determine if a decade of minute geological settlement has irreversibly affected its perfectly vertical stance. The decade-old design is now obsolete. Its original fire protection system design, for instance, likely falls far short of the new super-tall building fire codes enacted in China after 2020, which are among the strictest in the world. This means the entire life support system, electrical, HVAC, fire protection, communications, may need to be completely stripped out, redesigned, and reinstalled. And the biggest question is how its soul will be redefined. A decade ago, it was positioned as a luxurious palace for the world's top 0.1%. But today, 10 years later, the world has been turned upside down. A global pandemic has made remote work the norm, severely impacting the demand for centralized, premium Grade A office buildings. China's economic development philosophy has also shifted from pursuing height and speed to a more restrained and pragmatic, high-quality development. That high society hub in the clouds, built for financial giants and energy oligarchs, now seems like a black and white film from a pre-internet era. The new operators face a harsh choice: Continue following the old map from a decade ago in search of a luxurious continent that may have already sunk. Or pivot completely, transforming it into a complex for the public that integrates future technology, cultural tourism, and a vertical ecological park. Either choice means a new round of massive investment and another surgery on the existing structure. The official completion date of 2027 is considered overly optimistic by industry insiders. To understand why this building was born and why it died, we must turn the clock back to the beginning of this century. It was an era when the very air seemed to be filled with the scent of wealth and hormones. From its accession to the WTO in 2001 to 2011, China's GDP grew at a supersonic pace of over 10% annually on average, more than quadrupling in size in a decade. This explosive growth was unprecedented among major human economies. The total wealth it created was equivalent to building an entire Germany from scratch in 10 years. This unprecedented surge gave rise to a near-religious height worship throughout society. Skyscrapers were no longer just buildings, but totems of power, wealth, and ambition. Whoever had the taller building seemed to hold the key to the future. It was at the crest of this wave that Hong Kong tycoon Pan Sudong, with his golden group, stepped into the fervent land of Tianjin like a gambler with infinite chips. Pan Sudong himself is a controversial business legend. His empire spanned consumer electronics, fine wine, polo clubs, and finance, its boundaries blurred and filled with high-risk leverage. He brought with him a jaw-dropping plan, the Golden Metropolitan. A state within a state covering over 2 million square meters, integrating luxury residences, twin office towers, a high-end shopping mall, and an international standard polo club. And the heart of this kingdom was the 117 Tower. 597 meters, 117 stories. What did these numbers mean at the time? It was nearly 90 meters taller than Taipei 101, than the tallest tower in the Chinese world, equivalent to placing a Statue of Liberty on top of it. Its foundation piles alone numbered over 900, each nearly 100 meters long, enough to pierce through Tianjin's soft alluvial plain down to the solid bedrock. The total amount of structural steel it used was more than 7 times that of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. For Tianjin at the time, this was nothing short of a godsend. It would not only completely rewrite the city's skyline, but also bring in enormous land revenue and taxes. However, behind this war against gravity lurked a more fatal enemy, the laws of finance. The seeds of tragedy were sown from the very beginning. The mainstream real estate development model in mainland China is a high-turnover game that is extremely dependent on cash flow. That is, acquire land, mortgage it, get loans, build quickly, pre-sell quickly, collect cash, and acquire more land. It is an interconnected, high-leverage chain reaction. But Pan Sudong chose the most perilous path. Due to his Hong Kong capital background and the commercial nature of the property, his financing channels with mainland banks were relatively limited. More fatally, a super-tall landmark like the 117 could not be pre-sold on a large scale to recoup funds like residential properties can, not until its main structure was topped out and it passed complex fire safety inspections. This meant that the terrifying investment of around $10 billion had to be borne almost entirely by Golden Group's own capital or high-cost trust financing. Pan Sudong essentially gambled his entire business empire on the head of a pin. He was betting that during the long 7 to 8 year construction period, the global economy would continue to prosper, China's economy would continue its rapid advance, and most importantly, that his own cash flow would never dry up. Unfortunately, the storm arrived sooner and more fiercely than he had imagined. In 2015, the dominoes began to fall. In June, the Chinese stock market plummeted from its peak, falling by more than 30% in just 1 month. Pan Sudong and his golden-affiliated stocks had been heavily leveraged through frequent stock pledges during the preceding bull market. When the crash came, their stock prices collapsed. According to Bloomberg data, his personal paper wealth evaporated by more than $13 billion in a matter of days, enough money to build the 117 Tower all over again. Misfortune never comes singly. On August 12 of the same year, a massive explosion shocked the world. A catastrophic explosion occurred at the port of Tianjin, just a few dozen kilometers from the 117-tower construction site. The shockwaves of this tragedy were far more than physical. It dealt a heavy blow to Tianjin's urban image and investment climate, deterring many potential international partners. This fatal push and pull sealed the 117 Towers' death sentence. That flashy topping-out ceremony was nothing more than cheap perfume sprayed to mask the stench of a rotting corpse. The fate of the 117 Tower has transcended the building itself. It has become a giant mirror, reflecting on one side the glory, dreams, and fervor of China's past 2 decades, and on the other, the growing pains, reflections, and reinvention of an economic transition. The whole world awaits its final outcome. Perhaps people are no longer waiting to marvel at a building's height, but to understand through its fate the complex era we ourselves live in, one full of uncertainty, yet pregnant with new life. What face will it ultimately present to the world? The answer to that question will be the best commentary on our times.